Tonight will be on the law. I think you'll find it a very practical evening. But remember, you are the author in power. It doesn't operate itself. But all day long, whether you know it or not, you are operating it. Nothing appears to us in perception which cannot be duplicated in fantasy. Consequently, the world perceives all this resembles our private senses, and is, therefore, as far as the evidence goes, imaginable in character. And here we are trying to find the cause of the phenomena of life. What makes things happen? Why is that one poor and that one rich? Why is that one known and the other unknown? And why is one this and the other that? And yet, you are told in Scripture there is only one cause, only one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord, our God, the Lord is one. We aren't two gods. There's only one God. So, we have to find out who this one God is. If I should speak to you now, and say, and speak of your God, the chances are, and you can give it any number you want, 1,000,000 in one, or trillions in one, that hearing the word your God your mind will instantly think of someone or something external to yourself. I do not care how you form it, but you will think of God, your God, as external to yourself. But if I spoke of your imagination, I am certain you will think of no one but yourself. Could it be that your imagination is the God of Scripture? If you read Scripture carefully, you will find that it is. There is only one creative power. We are told in the 32nd chapter of the book of Deuteronomy that I, even I, am He. And there is no God beside me. I kill, I make alive, I wound, I heal. And there is none that can deliver out of my hand. From this, we see that the created power of the world, the creator of the world, is like pure imagining in ourselves. He works in the very depths of our soul, underlying all of our faculties, including perception, that He streams into our surface life, least disguised in the form of productive senses. So, you see anything here through your senses, shut your eyes, close your senses completely, and you can reproduce it in senses. Does it teach me anything? Well, I'll tell you, it will teach you everything if you'll believe it. If I can get you to accept the true God, the only true God, which is your own wonderful human imagination. Does Scripture teach it, really? Yes, Scripture does. And the word of the Lord, now the word translated Lord, is the Hebrew Yod Hai Bav Hai. It's not summed it, though we do high to sum it, we translate it as the Lord, and sometimes Jehovah, and sometimes they'll translate it, which they shouldn't, say as God. But the Lord? Yes. The word Jehovah? Yes. For the word Jesus begins, God, a vowel. So here we find the same root in the word Jesus. Therefore, they called him the Lord. And the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, saying, Arise, and go down to the potter's house, and I will let you hear my word. So, I went down to the potter's house, and there he was, working at his wheel. And the vessel in his hand was spoiled, that he was making a play. But he reworked it into another vessel, as it seemed good to him to do, was the word potter. You think, in terms of a man. I know in little Barbados, where I was born, I would go off to the potter's field. And there was working these things out of clay. Things where we would put the normal water into it, and in some strange way it chilled it. It would always be paint upon a nice cold glass of water if poured from what we called the mumper. It was a thing made of clay, had a little clay top and an open thing, like a huge big teapot. But made of clay. In the hottest moment of the day, if you poured it from that clay, it was always nice and cold. And so, I can see him now form the entire thing with his head. But, in Scripture, the word potter means imagination. You will find what I've just quoted in the 18th chapter of the book of Jeremiah. You'll also find it in the 64th chapter of the book of Isaiah. Thou art our Father, our Potter. Who is the Father? Well, the Lord. Well, the true translation of the word Lord, which is Yod Hai Bal Te, is, I am. If I should go to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers sent me unto you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say? Say to them, I am. That is who I am. Say to them, I am. I sent me unto you. Not the Lord has sent me unto you, or Jehovah has sent me unto you, or Jesus has sent me unto you, for these always fix the mind outside of self. Well, say to them, I am has sent me unto you. You want to know his name? Just say, I am. That is who I am. That is my name forever, and by this name I shall be known throughout all generations. But man will not bring himself to believe that that is God. He will not bring himself to believe that his own wonderful human imagination is God. And that is God. That forms everything in this world. There is no thing that you now see in the world, but what it was once only imagined. The image preceded the objective fact. So, objective reality is purely produced through imagination. The suits you wear, the dresses you wear, the chairs on which you were seated, the building that now houses you, everything was only imagined. And then it became an objective reality. And we think the objective state is its reality. It's not so at all. That which is the imaginative image is its reality. Destroy the objective fact. I can reproduce it from the imaginative image. It is all within us. Our own wonderful human imagination is the God of Scripture. Now, we are told, all things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world knew him not. So, you walk the earth as the cause of the phenomena of your life. You could be, if you are vivid in your imagination, be influencing the imaginations of unnumbered people, and you, unseen by them, are the cause of the phenomena of life. If they are passive, they fall under your influence. If you are powerful in your imagination, you are creating the phenomena of life. And those who are not in control of their imagination, who are moved by the wind of every little rumor, every opinion, they're simply swaying from side to side as you, in control, move them. You are the one treading in the wine press, and no one knows it. You could be in a dungeon, serving a long, long span of time. And, while there, eat enough with a desire, and then, in your silent moment, you are completely in control of that vivid creative power of the universe, your imagination, and you influence all the people of the world, for all things by a law divine, in one another being made for. I couldn't see you if you did not penetrate my brain. I couldn't hear you if you didn't penetrate it. So, all things by a law divine in one another's being mental. The whole vast world is one. You, in control of the creative power, which is your own wonderful human imagination, you could sway the entire vast world. If you can't do it, as some dictators have tried to do it, they bring in their propaganda machines. And then they're quite of force meant into a certain shell, into a certain state, and quite often they succeed up to a point. But you, without the aid of any machine in this world, you can change the structure of your world by the control of your own wonderful human imagination. That is God. That is the Lord spoken of in Scripture. That is Jesus. Or can you imagine? For that is God in operation. God only acts and is in existing beings or men. But how does he act? As I imagine anything. See, now that I, even I, am he, I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal, and none can deliver out of my hand. I raise my hand to heaven and cry, I live forever. That's the immortal you. It cannot die. When you say, I am, it cannot die. It's not confined to the little garment that you are wearing. That's a mask that you put upon yourself that you may be seen in this world of shadow. But you are not the mask that you wear. You are an immortal being, and that immortal being is God the Father as spoken of in Scripture. But I would like you to begin to feel it is simply, I am. And, by that, imagination, you can sit down at this very moment and begin to dream the most glorious dream in the world concerning yourself. At the moment of the dream, reason denies it. Your senses deny it. But if you dare to assume that assumption, that you are already that in its position, and persist in that assumption, it will harden into fact. Blake said, I met Isaiah and Ezekiel, and I dined with them that night, and I say to Isaiah, do you really believe that an assumption will harden in the fact that all prophets believe that it does? But today, not very many are capable of an assumption of anything. They change from moment to moment. If I could dare to assume that I am, what at the moment reason denies and persists in, my assumption, in a way that I do not know and I need not be concerned about, it will actually find the necessary means to externalize itself within my will, that I know from experience, and Scripture teaches it from beginning to end. This is the law that came after the promise. The promise came first, and that is irrevocable. No one can fail in the fulfillment of the promise. You will awaken one day as God Himself, and you will know it. That is the promise. But, while we are moving through this veil of tales, we have a law, and the law is the law of assumption. If I dare to believe that what I have said will come to pass, and not question it, well, go your way. It will come to pass. Here is a simple thing, my father, in a little tiny island. It's only 21 miles long by 14 miles. That's where I was born. He is not a brilliant mind. He's gone from this world at the age of 85. His time was up, and he departed. He had no formal education, very little education. The war came, the First World War came to an end in 1918. The boys began to return in 1990. These troop ships came in, bringing back the boys from Europe and from North Africa. He heard the officers, the captains, and the stewards discuss the next World War. I can hear my father now, for in 1919, I was born in 1905, so here I am, 14 years of age, and all of us are now growing up, young men. My father said, we will have another war in 20 years. It will break in 1939. Mother said, Joseph, why do you say that? Because all of our boys will all be ready for the war. Why do you say that? And there were 9 boys, 1 girl. He said it will happen in 1939, 20 years. He even named the 2 sides, and placed history on the side of Japan, on the side of Germany. Leaving England and France and Russia, he didn't mention the others very well. Naturally, it could be for granted that America would come into the thing, significantly, that we have inherited from England, what we now call the Bill of Rights. All that is part of the foundation of that English-speaking world. And he thought, well, now America was happening at the appropriate time, but in 1919 it was great. Well, on September the 1st, 1919, it wrote. I was driving through from Montreal. I just spent 2 weeks on the Canadian border. I went into Montreal and I had, well, champagne and stout, which a delight would bring, by the way. And so, I had a few of those. We got into the car and started back, and on the way back, here comes the radio, and here's the news. England has just declared war on Germany. Germany moved on Poland. England had a treaty and declared war. That was September 1990. Now, my father was not a prophet, but he firmly believed in his assumption. He was spreading the wine press in this tiny little island called Barbados, 21 miles long by 14 at its widest point. So, you don't have to be in a palace, you don't have to be in the White House, you don't have to be in any prominent place or the Vatican. Someone in a dungeon this night is spreading the wine press, and who knows what's going to happen when she has praised the wine press. It is always happening because he waits on us just as swiftly and as indifferently when the will in us is evil, as when it is good. For I kill and I make alive, I wound and I heal, I do all these things, I make the real and I create the world. I form the light, I create the darkness, I spell this and I die. There's only one created power. Don't think for one moment they are two gods, but a god and a devil. The devil is only the negation, the joker in this world. But the positive creative power of the world is your own wonderful human imagination. That is God. So, as you are seated here, God is seated here. And where are you going to go to find him? To find him no place other than where you are. You'll never find it outside of yourself. Approaching you, as some people are talking about it today, I turned on the radio, thinking I'm going to see the black star, to the moon. I thought I had Channel 4, so I sat back in my ED chair, or I didn't know what time it was going to come on. It said maybe 10 minutes to 10, so I turned it on at quarter to. Here comes this so-called prophecy from Australia, and being questioned by someone else, and he's giving all the interpretation of the prophecy of Scripture. I wonder, is this an insane asylum or something? And here he has given me all these little dates why Israel won in 6 days the last war, rather than others, because Israel always rests on the 7th day. Of all the nonsense in the world, and he is actually, before past undoubtedly a large audience, maybe not last Sunday morning, because it was an important thing, the boys casting off to the moon. I thought I had Channel 4, and I had Channel 5, so I sat there waiting, maybe some weather has delayed something, but I thought it was 4, and after 15 minutes this nonsense I got up and checked and missed the blast off. He was completely gone. Luckily, it was a replay. So, they replayed it later, and I saw the blast off. And this goes on every Sunday morning, and then they called him an authority, and he so smiled, he so loved that. You were an authority on the Bible. Well, you never heard such nonsense in your life. Well, that is it. I'm telling you of the true God. God became as we are, that we may be as he is. And that God is your own wonderful human imagination. So, when you say, I am that God, there is no other God. He literally became as we are. Our every breath is the breath of God, but he does not in any way interfere with this level of awareness, and compel us to be good, compel us to be kind, compel us to be anything. We can exercise the talent, no matter what mistakes we make, what horrors we make in this world, and we have done it, and are still doing it in this world. And who suffers? Only God suffers. But you say, but I am suffering, that's his name. Forever and forever he has no other name. It's not Jehovah, it's not the Lord, it's not Jesus, it is simply I am. That is the Father. And so, I'm telling you, tonight, if you really believe it, you can start now, this night, and change the world in which you live. Start with your own environment. What would it be like if it were true that I am now the man that I would like to be, or the woman that I'd like to be, and then simply define it as clearly? For the word potter simply means to mold into a form. The first definition is imagination. It means to resolve. It means to determine. So, you are returning a certain state in your world, a resolution now, I resolve to be, and you name it not based upon the essence of your sentence, or what reason dictates, but a wish on your part. As we are told in Shakespeare, it has been taught us from the primal state that he which is was wished until he were. And so, he is the reality in my world. He began only as a wish. I am the man I wanted to be. It began as a wish. My father became the success that he was when he departed this world. It began as a wish. He didn't have 1 penny in this world. He went to a school. What do you think the charges were? A penny a week, the British penny being 2 cents, it was 2 halfpennies, 1 penny. A penny a week, many a week, his father being a very, very heavy drinker, couldn't find the penny to pay that populist scholastic fee, but he came out and started without a decent education, but he had a dream. And he always had the dream. And when he was toppled from a small little partnership, 2 of my brothers went to see the 3 men who actually maneuvered the entire thing, and they asked, why? What happened to Daddy? Why did this thing happen? You know what one of them said to my 2 brothers? He said, you goddess throw your hat too high. Well, you can't throw it high enough, may I tell you. Who in this world is more entitled to any exalted state than you? For, in-house within you is the only God. So, there it says, you goddess throw your hat too high. He wanted us to always remain based upon the level where my parents began in this world. That was not my father's dream. So, do not let anyone judge you to be satisfied with this, that, or the other. It is the God in you that gives you desire. You wouldn't eat tonight if you didn't have a desire. And who is desiring? It is God's desire. Desiring constantly to transcend himself. And so tonight, you dream no more dreams. I am telling you, those who are coming here, those who have been coming through the years, New York, San Francisco, and elsewhere, they're now beginning to really come into a head to awaken to the truth that I have been telling you through the years. That you are going to discover that you are God the Father. Thou art our Father, yet our Father, and we are the clay in thy hand. The day will come when you'll discover why he calls us the clay. We are emotional filters, and we bear the marks of our prevalent emotions, and he allows these marks, good, bad, or indifferent. He does not in any way dictate what I should entertain as a thought. All right? Entertaining. So, I want to feel sorry for myself and go out and eat worms. Go and eat the worms. Have some more. That's exactly what he does to all of us. No compassion whatsoever, not to think for one moment that he's going to stop you with the act. He allows you to completely run your own world over, and make all the mistakes and our inequities, and the word deliver in Greek, in Hebrew, and in Latin means to mill. He has milled it up, has kneaded us into our inequities. So, we are so much a part of it, we can't even separate ourselves from these incriminates. He wants us to be delivered right into our inequities, as told us in the 64th chapter of the book of Isaiah. Read it again, and you'll see this vision that possessed these men who were qualified to hear from the depths of their own selves, for they heard it as adumbration, and then changed the understanding of these shadows, these foreshadows. And the day will come that everyone in this world will discover he is God the Father, and because he is the Father, then there must be a Son, and that Son is David. David is the Christ, the prophet of inscription, but man doesn't know that yet. I am telling you from experience, I know it. And one day you're going to actually see the Christ who reveals you as the Lord, who is the Father. So, David is called, not in Scripture, because it will be going dead again. All right. There is thought back. Is it back? Yeah. So, I'm telling you, there's only Father and Son in this entire wonderful story, but then who then is this Dave that is the Son? Davy is the sum total of all the parts that the Lord, I Am, has played. He is the resultant state, and you've played all the parts, good, bad, and indifferent. And having played all the parts, then the sum total, the resultant sake, comes out, and there he stands before you, and he is David. David is the resultant sake, the Christ, the anointed one of the parts, and it takes him to reveal you as God's part. And certainly, one is going to have this experience. There's a lady here tonight who had this experience back in November, that I came upon this beautiful youth of sheer innocence, about 13 years of age, ruddy of complexion, as described in the 16 chapters of 1 Samuel, and he came to me and he said, "You are in the part food degree." And I say to him, "How do you know?" He said to me, I know. And then the vision faded. Then she said, I had this experience. I saw 3 men walking towards me. They were all with a heavenly smile on their face. As they approached, they so resembled each other, they could be triplets. They could be brothers, but triplets they were so completely alike as they approached. And one had an infant wrapped in a blanket, and he came towards me and placed it in my hand. I took the infant, and I knew it was my child. Now, 2 days prior to this experience, lying on my bed, I saw these heavenly colors of, well, purple, sort of the amateur starlight. And then, as they faded, it formed into the most wonderful, brilliant star. I'm looking at the star when suddenly the whole thing faded, and 2 days later came 3 messengers bringing the infant child. For that's told us in the book of Genesis. Abraham sat in the heat of the day as he sat in the tent, and 3 men appeared to announce to him that he would be a father, in spite of his advanced years. And Sarah had ceased to be with her after the manner of women. This is all beautiful imagery. It's all you. You are the Abraham, you are the Sarah, and Isaac is the child that is given as a sign of your birth from above. And so here she had the most marvelous experience. She knew the child was hers, and 3 messengers, so like, they looked like ciphers, and they named the star that preceded the entire thing by 2 days, and then the youth, who said to her, "You are in the fatherhood degree." And then she asked, "How do you know?" He replied, "I know," and then affirmed it by the second statement, "I know." So, I tell you, the law came after the promise. The promise is something that you cannot lose. No one can lose. You could be the most horrible dreamer in the world, and at all we are anyway, dreaming these fantastic dreams, and some are horrible. But you cannot lose the promise. You can work the law beautifully up to the extreme. That does not mean in any way you are going to earn the promise. The promise comes in spite of the use of law. But why are we in the world of Caesar? Why not understand the law and use it wisely? Every moment of time you must be watchful, aware of what you're imagining. The part that changes circumstances before you change your imaginal activity is the struggle against the very nature of things. Because your imaginal activity is actually producing objective reality. And so, until I change that which is the cause of the phenomenon of life, I'm going to reproduce the same thing in my world. So, I'll start tonight to change it by changing the imaginal activity. Pierre Posse said, and I think it's a very marvelous statement that he made, the secret of imagination is the greatest of all problems, to the solution of which all should aspire. For supreme power, supreme wisdom, supreme delight lies in the far-off solution of this mystery. There are so many facets to it. Here I stand, and I say, I'm all imagination, but am I really here based upon the evidence my senses? Can I not block out what my reason and my senses are dictating and be elsewhere? Can I not imagine myself to be elsewhere and view the world from there, instead of wanting to be there and viewing it from here, which tells me I am not. What's right? You can be any place you want to be in this world. Man must be wherever he is in imagination, for man is all imagination. So, I will simply imagine myself to be elsewhere if that's what I want to be, or to be other than what I am, if that's what I want to be, and view the world from that assumption. Go forward and prepare the place that wherever the sole of your foot shall tread upon, the same gave I unto you. Wherever the sole of my foot stays, he gives them, for they don't remain here the time if I want to be elsewhere. And the elsewhere need not be spatial. It could be in a financial manner. It could be in a social manner. It could be in any manner. And so, I would dare to trade on a different level. I would dare to assume that I am that which I want to be. I'm trading on it. And I must be wherever I am in imagination, for I am all imagination. Man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us, and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. The divine body we call Jesus is your own wonderful human imagination, and you begin morning, noon, and night by the misuse of your imagination. He bears all the stripes of man, but is only your own wonderful human imagination, and he is the immortal you. One day he will awaken in you, not as another, but as you. Let these fellows go forward believing that some strange thing is going to happen, and he's going to come out of the clouds and shake their hands. He'll wait forever. When he comes from within, because he is within. Do you not realize that Jesus Christ is in you? Unless, of course, you fail to reach the dead. Examine yourself to see whether you are holding to the faith. Jesus Christ is in you. Do you not realize that you are the temple of the Lord, and the Spirit of God dwells in you? If he dwells in thee, try and look on the outside for him to come. When he comes only to awaken within thee because he's already within thee. He awakes within thee as the very being in whom he awakes. And then I see confirmation of that, but I see the resultant state daily. And it's handsome, wonderful. You never want them to take over the intensive, but you can't state or stutter the beauty of David. It's beyond description. Something alive that you cannot describe, that the resultant state of all the parts that the Lord has placed. And who is the Lord? I am he. So, you're told you will die in your state unless you believe, I am he. Now, this has to be believed in an external God. They'll find it so much useful to stick him on the wall and force themselves and get done and tear his legs. That's done. Did it all today, before my work today is done. We'll do it again tomorrow. Meanwhile, I go about my business doing all kinds of nonsense with my imagination, and I think I serve the Lord. It's not something you do once in the morning before some little thing on the wall. It's something you do 24 hours a day. You carry it right into the dream world with you. And there your reactions are as it should be when you're awake here. But you are completely in control of your wonderful human imagination for that God. That's the creative power of the world. So take anyone wherever he is and just try to lift him up to something other than what he seems to be, if he wants to be other than what he is. And they ask him to persist to the best of his ability in that new assumption, and to feel it as you would a suit of clothes. It's new when you first buy it, wear it for a week, it's old stuff. The first day you put it on, you think everyone knows you're wearing a new suit, and really no one does. What you do, and so it's what you do, and so, after a little while, it's an old thing. So, put on the feeling. It's like something new when you first put it on, and wear it, and then after a while it becomes so natural. Again, it objectifies itself in your world, and you become exactly what you've assumed that you are. For an assumption, no thought, if persisted in, will harden into fact. You try. Who would have thought an insane person like a Hitler or a Stalin could by a mere assumption rise to the height that they did and actually control intelligent men and women, 100 million Germans, the other 200-odd million Russians, and they could destroy them with impunity, kill millions with impunity. They weren't put on file, yet both were seized and robbed before they actually moved to that position. Kali was a bank robber and served time for it, and yet they honored him over the years he was there, knowing all along he had been saved by the good and the evil. A man called Hitler says, he was just as insane as anyone could be, but he did assume, and boldly assume, and he lived in it. That's what I mean by this strange, peculiar law that kills and makes alive, and it wounds and it heals. It makes the dark and creates the light. It forms the wheel and still creates the world. It does all things, and no one can deliver out of its hands. So, it's entirely up to us. What are we going to do with this creative power in the world, when we ourselves are that power? If you don't say, I'm going to take it from outside and use it, we are the power. We are the creative power of the universe, and that power the world calls God, but in calling it God, in calling it Jehovah, in calling it Lord, they are missing the point. Because they put it on the outside. If you really know, read the 3rd chapter, the 14th verse of Exodus, that's where the name is beautifully described for us. And when I come to the people of Israel and I tell them, the God of your father sent me to you. And they say, what is his name? What shall I say? Say unto them, I am. That is who I am. And when you go to them, you just say, I am and sent me to you. And that is my name forever, and by that name, I shall be known throughout all generations. But Israel finds it difficult to keep the tin, and so it's always something other than iron. It's so much easier to blame someone other than self for the things that are happening to us. And I point here, there, and elsewhere. I forget what I did in my idle moment, and when the harvest comes up for me to weave it, I deny that I planted these seeds. When on earth did I plant them? Well, if I was honest with myself, I would know you count the morning, noon, and night, in the course of a day. A number of idle moments catch you thinking all kinds of things. You don't know the people, and yet you'll be acting and doing all kinds of things.